Hello, my name's Charles Simpson. I'm 90 years old. I was born in Paddington and have lived in Hammersmith for 70 of those 90 years. During the war, a bomb dropped on the house I lived in Paddington, and the council relocated me to the White City Estate, Grey House. It was there that I met my wife, Sylvia Simpson, who was then Sylvia Scarles.
I'm the other half. I'm Sylvia Simpson. I'm how old am I? 86 years old. And I was born in Stepney, East London, where I lived until we were bombed in 1940, and we were rehoused in the White City Estate in Hammersmith.
When we were first married, we lived in a small upstairs flat in North Kensington, and we lived there for 4 years, and during that time my eldest son was born.
Eventually we moved into a council house on the Wormholt Estate. We had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl.
Our children, 2 boys and a girl,
Cut it out, Kate.
were educated firstly at Wormholt School, and then went to St Clement Danes and Burlington, as those schools were named before they amalgamated.
We've lived in our present home on the Wormholt Estate for 54 years, and times have changed things a lot. From the time we moved in until now, there's been a heck of a lot of differences made.
We had no television set, we had no telephone. All our heating was from coal fires, so we had no radiators, no central heating. We've gradually progressed to, we've got all of these things.
I never had a washing machine. Everything either had to be hand washed, or else if you wanted to boil things to get them really clean, you boil them on top of your cooker. But we were very happy. We were very happy to have a house. We had one fire in the living room.
Coal fire?
A coal fire, which had to be cleaned out and relayed each day, each morning. But for the rest of the house, it remained unheated. Well, when we went to bed, it was very cold. And I can remember on really cold winter's nights, we'd had a sheet of glass, a sheet of ice on the glass on the inside windows in the bedroom. It was that cold. We didn't have central heating for what, how many years now?
Until 1983.
Yeah, that was the first time we had central heating. But by then, the other rooms in the house we used to keep warm with electric fires. I don't think we had a television until
1962.
We had a black and white television with about, not a very big screen, about 15-inch screen or something like that.
Before we got television, we used to listen to the radio somewhat. We read a lot. Oh, in those days, of course, with no television, the cinema was a great attraction. We used to go at least once a week to the cinema. The dearest seat in the local picture house was 1 shilling and sixpence, which would be 7.5 pence, equivalent to 7.5 pence of today. I've often said that for a 2 shilling piece, which was 1/10 of a pound, equal to 10p nowadays, you could go to the pictures, you could buy, on your way in, you could buy a Mars bar, you could have an ice cream, you could come out, you could, if you were old enough, you could go in the pub and have a pint of beer, you could buy some fish and chips and come home with change out of what is now 10 pence. Even for second-rate films. There was always a queue outside. This was one form of enjoyment that everybody liked. It was cheap, and
It was warm.
for 2 or 3 hours it took you out of your normal drab existence to a different world.
When I was a little girl and I lived in Stepney, I used to spend most of my time playing in the streets or in the local park. I used to take neighbours' babies, all little girls did then, to the park in the pushchair, in the pram. I don't know, they used to trust us with their little ones. And
Swimming?
I went swimming. I was fortunate because I used to go a lot to the museums. I lived in Stepney, we weren't terribly far from museums, and I used to go Science Museum, Natural History Museum. Also I belonged to the library, which was really great because I used to go there a couple of times a week borrowing books.
I think children had far more freedom than they've got now.
The streets were...
My friends and I used to go up to Hampstead Heath or somewhere like that. We'd play all day, completely unaccompanied by adults. So we had very young children with us. I suppose the age group would be something like, the oldest one would be about 15 and the youngest would be about 8. There might be a gang of 7 or 8 of us, and we'd be out there all day. Our parents had no worries about us at all.
One thing that's very important, thinking about 50, 60 odd years ago, or longer when we were children, there was very, very little traffic around. I lived in a street which had possibly about 50 houses in it, and no one had a car at all. And if anybody drove down the road with a car, it was a great event. We all rushed out to see it.
There were so very few people owned cars. When I started out to work in 1937, I worked in a printing firm in Bowlby Road in North Kensington. We had 1,000 employees in that firm. In the whole of that firm, out of those 1,000 employees, only one person owned a car and only 2 people owned motorbikes, and that was out of 1,000 people.
When I was very young, when I was a child, we always used to have bread delivered. The guy used to come round every day, deliver bread and muffins and cakes and things like that. Oh yeah, every day, except Sunday, but apart from that. And they used to have horse and carts come around the street selling vegetables and fruit that was in season. We had no supermarkets, it was all small stalls, all small shops, and in the market, obviously, markets were quite near home. Quite a lot of markets around used to buy fresh vegetables and meat off the stalls. It was a pretty slow process, not like now when you whiz round the supermarkets, grabbing everything and pay for it on the way out. But it was part of life, wasn't it?
Talking about foodstuffs, one thing is, which has changed completely, is chicken, which is one of the cheapest forms of meat you can get now. In our young days, chicken was a luxury and you only got it once a year. That's
probably
at
Christmas.
Because in those days the chickens were all of them, without exception, were
no factory farming.
They weren't factory farmed at all. They were free range chickens, and it's only since these people have started making them, sort of mass producing them, the chickens could become so cheap. But in my day, chicken was a real luxury, and if you got it at Christmas, you were lucky.
And a lot of people that lived in houses, even if they only had little gardens, kept chickens.
My father kept chickens for till he died, but I was only 6 when he died, and after that, of course, my mother had to get rid of them, but we had 5 or 6 chickens kept in around the back garden, and we used to eat their eggs, and on one occasion I remember he killed one for our Christmas dinner. But once my father died, of course, my mother had to get rid of them. But a lot of people did keep chickens in their backyards or back gardens in those days.
As children, our toilets weren't inside the house, they were out in the back garden. So if you wanted to go to the toilet in the night, you had to get up and go out the back garden. We used to bath in front of the kitchen fire. They used to have a big zinc bath. Didn't get as many baths. You got, say, 1, but possibly 2 baths a week. And this is because, I suppose, in better off families, they did have houses with bathrooms, but in my household we never did. And as I got older, we went to the public baths, where the public baths had about a dozen baths where you used to pay, I think it was footpence, wasn't it? You go in and you get a hot bath. We moved from when we were bombed from our house in Stepney, this was during the Blitz, and they moved us to the White City estate. The absolute luxury of having an indoor toilet and a bath, it was really, really great. I was then about 15, I suppose, and I really appreciated that.